When I was a boy growing up on the island, our village sat in a low place near years and years of blue. Our home was warm and small, and I know you've never heard of it. Never heard of any of this. It always happens in those remote places where the sun rises loud and alive and secret. The boat didn't have a proper name that any of us knew, so we simply called it Lighthouse on account of its purpose. A few times each year, for as many years as I or anyone could remember, Lighthouse would appear, shining its red light. For as long as the ship was visible, no one would venture into the ocean. Fishermen would ground their boats, the whole village would go out and look over the water, waiting. It might take a day or a week, but Lighthouse would eventually go dark and leave. I always wondered what would happen if any of our boats went out during those red shine days. No one, even the elders, seemed to know why the sea was dangerous when Lighthouse visited. Only that the waters could not be risked. There were many nights I would sit in the sand, feet just above the tide line, staring out at the scarlet glow hiding the shadow of the ship. The summer I turned 16, Lighthouse returned. We pulled in the boats that morning and grumbled about the fish we wouldn't catch, but the mood was bright. Every time the ship visited, it felt like a small holiday. I was imagining the bonfire on the beach we'd have that night. Then I heard my brother curse. Lighthouse was moving closer to the shore, closer than I had ever seen. We all stood in the sand, eyes nailed to the progress of that soft red light. There was an emergency meeting. My brother argued we should flee inland to the hills. Others laughed and mocked him. Many were tired of fearing the ship, of avoiding the sea whenever it returned. In the end, half of us went into the hills, while the other half stayed. A storm came in the afternoon. Thunderheads crashed across the sky, purple lightning licking across the island. We watched from the hills as the ocean first retreated from the shore, then came roaring back in a wave higher than the tallest tree. But the water stopped when it struck the village. A wall of dark blue that flowed and crashed yet stayed frozen in one spot. Above the roil of the water came the distant sound of screaming. The wave held the village for 3 days. On the 4th, it pulled back into the ocean. Lighthouse was there, shining red. Like the water, it too headed away from shore. We returned to the village, all of us mourning, certain that our friends and family were washed out to the sea. If only they'd been that lucky. We found all of the bodies on land. The skin was peeled from each corpse. Bellies slit so the trails of organs dangled like wind chimes. Bite marks showed clear in the raw muscle and bone. Worst of all were the faces of the dead. Each was carved into a mask of agony, of knowing, as if they were still alive while being ripped apart. That was years ago. I've grown older, traveled and learned. Any given year, there are something like 40 named storms that will cross the Atlantic. Similar numbers for the Pacific. Any one of them could carry what I saw in my youth on that island. Or it might be smaller storms that never earn a name but carry the end with them, cradling a wet hunger. Some years maybe they don't show up at all. If you find yourself somewhere away from the twitching eye of civilization, and you see a ship with a red light holding steady on the tide, go the other way.